All right, so we're diving back into the 19th century today, but not for your typical history lesson.
Right.
We've got these two sources, the enigma of empty cities, which is mostly photos, and unearthing the buried past.
Yeah.
Both kind of hint at like a hidden history, which I think is super interesting. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's wild, right? How they both touch on these kind of separate things,
Hmm.
empty cities, buildings swallowed by mud,
Yeah, yeah.
and this feeling like something's missing in the history we're told.
The photos in empty cities, man, they're striking. Cities that should be packed, like totally deserted.
It's eerie, isn't it?
It is. Like St. Petersburg in the 1860s, 500,000 people supposedly live there.
Right.
But the pictures, wide open streets, barely anyone around. It's unsettling.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? And it's not just St. Petersburg. That 1878 panorama of San Francisco, I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Huge city, almost 200,000 people, they say. But all you see is like one horse.
Really?
It makes you question what was really going on back then.
It's like a ghost town, but we know people were there.
Exactly.
And then there's the mud. It's everywhere, not just dirt roads.
Oh, yeah.
Unearthing the Buried Past talks about London, mid-1800s. It says, and I quote, "As much mud in the streets as if the waters had been newly retired from the face of the earth." Dramatic, huh?
It is. And it makes you think about, soil liquefaction.
Yeah.
Like in the Christchurch earthquake, 2011, buildings just sank into the mud.
Oh, right, right.
Could that have happened, but like on a way bigger scale back then? Maybe that's why everything's so muddy and things got buried.
Yeah, it's a lot of mud to just be from like bad weather or whatever.
Exactly. And then that ties into like who even built this stuff? These grand, intricate buildings from the 1800s. Did they really have the tech for that?
Right.
Or, what if it's leftovers from some way more advanced civilization, one we forgot about?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a pretty wild thought. Like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, those sculptures,
Yeah.
so detailed.
I know, right?
How'd they do that without modern tools?
Unearthing the buried past also points out how fast they supposedly built some things.
Okay.
St. Basil's Cathedral, all those domes and colors apparently built in just 6 years. And this was in the 1500s, using their tech back then. Doesn't quite add up, does it?
That's crazy. Makes you wonder. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions about this architecture and how it fits into like the history we're told,
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we've got these empty cities, buried buildings, and questions about who built them, right? What else is in these sources?
Well, unearthing the buried past goes into this kind of controversial theory.
Okay.
Some researchers think all that mud in the photos, it's from a mud flood, like a huge event that changed everything, maybe even wiped out tons of people.
A mud flood. Sounds intense. What could even cause something like that?
There are a bunch of theories, from natural disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes, to some wilder stuff, like changes in the Earth's magnetic poles, even alien events.
Wow.
But gotta be careful, it's all highly debated. No real agreement among, scientists or historians.
Right, right. So how does this mud flood idea connect to, the empty cities and the super advanced buildings we talked about?
The people who believe this theory, they say the flood caused massive damage, buried the buildings, created those landscapes we see in the pictures, all covered in mud. And they think the advanced architecture, that's proof there was a super high-tech civilization before the flood, one that was maybe wiped out or had to leave their cities.
Man, that's a pretty wild scenario. Are there any other explanations for this stuff that don't involve, like, a global catastrophe?
Oh, of course. Always got to look at other possibilities. Some historians say all that mud, it was just from bad sanitation and cities growing too fast during the Industrial Revolution,
Okay, yeah.
And the empty cities, maybe it's the cameras back then. They needed long exposures, so anything moving, like people, wouldn't show up.
So the streets might not have been as empty as they look.
Exactly. And the advanced architecture, well, we can't just dismiss the skill of the architects and builders from the 1800s. They were pretty ingenious.
True, true. It sounds like we got to be careful about jumping to conclusions based on, like, cool pictures or theories.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot more research needed to really figure out what was happening back then.
Absolutely. These sources are fascinating, give us glimpses into the past, but they also show us history's complex, lots of interpretations. We got to think critically about the evidence, look at all sides.
So where do we go from here? What else can we explore based on what these sources tell us?
Yeah.
Feels like we've got more questions now than answers,
Yeah.
but that's what makes this stuff so interesting, right?
Totally. Enigma of empty cities and unearthing the buried past, they make you really think about what we know about the 1800s. They're like, hey, look beyond the usual stories, Consider other viewpoints, even if they challenge what we think we know.
It's easy to get stuck in, like, the accepted version of history. But these sources are saying there's more to find, more to explore.
Exactly. Empty cities, the mud everywhere, how those crazy buildings were made. There's a mystery there. It's like clues to a puzzle we're just starting to figure out.
That's what makes it so cool. History isn't just dates and names. It's about asking, challenging what we assume, trying to understand how the world got to be this way.
Right. These sources don't give all the answers, but they make you curious. They make you want to dig deeper into the past.
It's a reminder that history's always being discovered. There's always more to learn. So what's the big takeaway you hope people get from this deep dive?
I'd say be skeptical. Don't just believe what you're told, whether it's textbooks, documentaries, even podcasts like this one.
Right.
Question everything, do your own research, come to your own conclusions based on the evidence.
That's great advice. Who knows, maybe by questioning and exploring, you'll find something huge, something that changes how we see history forever.
That's the exciting part. The past is full of mysteries waiting for someone to come along and solve them.
Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this trip through the mysterious 1800s.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, stay curious. Until next time, keep diving deep.